We've had a wonderful morning, I think, rich in compelling evidence, some great stats, absolutely backed by robust mining of the data. We've had some fantastic visual metaphors too. Martian pendulum, cakes, free-range eggs, crack cocaine, Taliban, banned words, sorry about that. Should we call them insurgents? I actually like to think, I think resistance fighters might be a better terminology in this context here. So fantastic. So we have the panel, you've met three of them. I'm just going to introduce Rachel. Let's stick your hand up, Rachel. Rachel McDonald, MD of Carat, Manchester. Got a degree in media from Leeds, started her career at MPG, been to Sydney, came back, too hot, wasn't it? Right, too sunny there. Came back to Manchester in 2001 with what was then MediaVest, and has soared through the ranks to become MD of Carat now. And the clients include Thomas Cook, Holland Barrett, Skipton Building Society, GHD, hair straighteners, things like that. Yep, okay. And Paul Cooper, stick your hand up, Paul. MD of MediaCom North, been with MediaCom since 2011, starting on the digital side and heading up its iLab unit. At the same time, he's had a regional role, and 2015 was made head of the Manchester operation. Before that, after uni in Manchester, are you a Manchester boy? You are, okay. Started his career on the digital side with a spell at ITV sandwiched in between. Right, let's start, okay. So let's start with Rachel and kind of Paul and Alex briefly, because you're the people who spend the money. Let's start with Rachel. Let's start with you, Rachel. Are you surprised, or do you feel challenged by what you've heard from Peter and Sally? I mean, after all, you are the people presumably represented on Sally's charts where the money to news brands is going down. So do you feel challenged by what you've heard?
Maybe some of the figures are slightly bigger than I was expecting, but to be honest, no. And I think that sort of stems mainly for me is that if I'm being completely honest, which I suppose you'd like me to be on a panel, I don't really recognise the sort of negative sort of dialogue that was being talked about, that people think that print is dead. That's not what I hear from my clients. That's not what I get from my clients. What I get is print is now one option, or news brands are one option within a wider range of options. So it's got to fight harder for its place at the table. I've still got plenty of clients that are just as interested in print as they are in digital. And of course, that segment of one, or thinking just about myself, does happen. It happens in clients who have preferences. But I think they welcome any evidence that gives them a benchmark. Clients are obsessed now with benchmarking themselves against their competitors. They're obsessed with having empirical evidence for making decisions. They feel really comfortable with having data to make decisions, driven by digital and by everyone using econometrics these days. So I think it's really welcome. The challenge we have is, as was referenced, every time you see a presentation, you get lots of good evidence for why you should use that medium. And for us, it's about understanding where each role, where each channel has a role to play. And I really believe that clients still think that news brands have a role. And I think, if anything, recently more of a role. Okay, all right. So,
Paul, what about you? How do you discuss news brand investment with your clients?
In the same way we discuss all investment, it's about the role and the outcome. I think Alex did a great presentation this morning about, we talk about planning to outcomes, and it's about linking the different metrics, whether it be short-term or long-term, understanding what it's there to do on a schedule. We don't justify schedules. We put schedules together to deliver what we think our clients need, and understand the different media channels and the roles they play, and link the metrics. So if it's a short-term awareness metric, how does that affect long-term? Building the base was fantastic from yourself. Understanding the roles that build the base. So our press investment's actually up 5% year on year. The one thing I do think, the terminology I would advise personally to change for the industry, is this print versus online news brands. I don't see that. My clients don't see that. I don't think the industry should see that.
It's just news brands.
It's just news brands. Yeah, more consumers access news brand content digitally than through a paper. I think there's a wariness about how to monetize that. So you go to what you know. My stint at ITV showed me that. So I've seen how kind of media owners and broadcasters kind of protect what they know. For me, it would be investing in understanding how to monetize your digital assets. So the biggest increase in spends we've had is where we've done cross-platform campaigns. Excuse me. So where we've just wanted to access Newsbrand's audience, we've done a partnership, and regardless of where that content's actually consumed, that's what we wanted to try and access.
Okay, Alex, when you're talking about Newsbrand investment with your clients, I mean, are they clear about what they want their Newsbrand to deliver as part of the total mix?
To a point, but exactly as Rachel said, there's a lot of reinvestigation of that, and it's not from the point of view of a lack of trust. It's not because people are saying, I don't think print delivers. It's more that when you only had TV and radio and out-of-home and press to play with, it had to deliver on a lot of different goals. Now that there are more tools in the toolbox, or toys in the toy box, if you like, there's a reappraisal of what particular channels, particularly ones that we've had for ages, are particularly good at. And that's where we're getting asked a lot to be kind of knowledge businesses.
Right. Well, I mean, Denise made an interesting point, which is that no one ever got fired for putting something new on the plan, but they have to argue the case for Newsbrand or something established much harder. I mean, is that the case for you? You know, is it like a bit like pushing water uphill?
I sense the answer you'd like is a yes, but
No,
realistically, no, I don't think it is.
Okay. Is it like pushing water? Okay, but the figures suggest that you're not pushing water downhill either.
That's fair.
Collectively, as
Yeah.
Okay.
We have clients, Omnicom Media Group, certainly worldwide, where they will say print is a dirty word. They like new and shiny things, and so even though you can prove the effectiveness of it, they're less interested in it.
So there's kind of some emotional resistance to.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
There's a little bit of historical context as well, that it took a long time for the digital channels to gain serious momentum as lines of spend. You know, if you go back kind of 5 years, maybe 10 years or so, and people were still in kind of toe in the water territory, they've been very successful at changing that, and now the Martian pendulum has certainly swung a long way. And so you're getting a bit of natural kind of reappraisal, and I expect that you'll see some movement back.
okay. Peter, I mean, you know, the evidence that you presented and the evidence that Sally has presented, it's compelling, it's unambiguous. Are people deaf? I mean, they're just not hearing it, or they're, selectively deaf, or unwillingly deaf, or whatever, unwittingly deaf?
I think we all assume that decisions in business are made rationally and on the basis of informed, evidence-based thinking. But we all know decisions are ultimately made as much through emotions and what we want to believe than what the evidence says. And I think that is the battle that Newsbrands face here, and indeed other established media, that there is this, wall of sound coming out there that is making us all believe that the future is digital and uniquely digital, and in particular that it is uniquely the duopoly who are going to be delivering it. And it's a powerful kind of set of emotional beliefs that are coming with this. We all sort of instinctively feel we should believe it. And I loved Denise's power of one thing. I think that absolutely taps into what we're all up against here. So I don't think it's that people are kind of deaf or stupid. It's just we are led by what we want to believe, and we selectively choose the data that supports our beliefs, and we selectively tend to ignore data that challenges our beliefs. It's the reality of being a human being. And we just have to remember that the people who make these decisions are human beings like everybody else.
So how does the industry and who has the responsibility for changing this perception then? That's a difficult question. Would anybody like to we'll start with you, Peter?
Well, I mean, I have a session. I've said this many times before. That the problem you have here is that you are facing a global machine as national media, and that is a tough challenge. And I've said this before, that the media owners in the key markets need to internationalise and multinationalise their message. So it's not good enough for us to say, in the UK, you should be putting Newsbrands on. It needs to be part of a global argument.
Because the advertisers are taking these decisions at a global level.
Very often for global advertisers, but the sales machine and the synergies and the tools are all coming at them from a global level as well, and you need to be able to parry that, I think.
Okay.
So...
But we're essentially national. They are national media. They're not really owned by multinationals, and they can't really, other than the Guardian, perhaps, and the Mail Online, which I've developed internationally, they can't really play on a level playing field, can they?
Well, it's absolute cooperation.
Yeah. Okay, Alex. Do you think they can? What would you, if you were paid by news brands newsworks to tell them how to change the conversation? What would you say?
I suppose a big part of it actually is evidenced by some of what we've seen today, which is invest more heavily and more tactically as well in proving that what you do works. So this is the work you've seen today is a very good strategic justification, a very good kind of total view that news brands are effective. But I think if you look at Facebook, if you look at Google, notwithstanding some of their issues around video measurement this week, they don't just have a sales machine, a PR machine, a spin machine. They have a very good research machine. They spend more than anyone else, probably more than any other media owner, on demonstrating that individual campaigns that you run through their platforms work. So they spend hugely with Nielsen, with Millward Brown, doing brand lift effect studies to demonstrate individual kind of effect. And so I think there's some catching up to do. It's not just about saying we are being outsold or outspun. You are also being outmeasured. And you're being outmeasured increasingly on stuff that matters, not just kind of short-term crack cocaine metrics, but brand effects.
Right, but the fact that they are measuring their own stuff, does that have any resonance? Unlike news brands where they are independently and objectively measured, does that have any resonance with clients? I mean, Rachel and Paul.
Yeah, I agree that marketing on homework's never a good thing, but you can do that through collaboration. You can do it through working with agencies. You can do it through working with independent bodies. There are independent econometric businesses, and also I think there's a key thing. Just picking up on your question from Alex, it's about short term and long term. You can't just have one or the other. Businesses don't exist in the UK in that mode anymore. You have to, and I think that's why a lot of other mediums. It's easier for planners to put it on a schedule because you can have a long-term justification metric and also deliver on a short-term sales metric. So I think it's about understanding how those two work together. And I think other mediums have done that quite well. They've done it well because it's probably easier to do than it is in press. So television, it's easy to understand short-term effective TV as well as long-term effective TV. I think that's where news brands need to understand kind of linking those measurements and the short and the long term is pretty crucial because the data that you put up before, we see that through, so we've got financial clients who do spend 20% of their budget in press. We've got then more emotive-driven decisions from gaming clients who spend large budgets because it's a way of accessing audiences on a Saturday morning. Etc. So there are emotive reasons as well as evidential reasons. I think it's about connecting the two in the long and the short term.
Yeah.
Not an easy task to do, but I think it's a task that I think collectively the industry is capable of doing.
Yeah. Rachel, do you think how difficult it is? Do you think to join the short term and the long term up in a way that has some impact on the way clients make their decisions?
Well, I think it's a bigger issue than just marketing. If I'm honest, I think the PLC model, which a large chunk of our clients sit into, is all about the short term. So most of my marketing directors, what's the average tenure now of a marketing director? 2-3 years.
I think you're being generous there.
Yeah, well, maybe we just get lucky, but and then they're all obsessed with like for likes and what is their long term goal? How long are they in that role for? So it's harder and harder. The one thing I would say that I've felt a bit of a shift for recently is what digital does give marketing directors is this kind of always-on activity that's almost a guaranteed level of investment that they know what they're going to get back for this year.
Yeah.
And that's actually, when that was like 5 or 10% of their sales, that was a nice to have. But now it's getting up to 30, 40% of their annual sales, or can do, including, it depends on the client, obviously. That is making some clients a bit braver because they've got this bedrock of activity. And and this always-on thing makes it a hard job in agency world, but it means always on means they can be a bit braver when they are doing campaigns. And for me, new and shiny on a schedule isn't just digital.
Even if that increasing their sales is at the cost of some of the longer term brand health metrics that Peter is talking about.
But it's the reality. So the
They
reality is they're always on now, and if they know what they're going to get back and that ROI looks better than what they're getting in another area, they will do it, and then the rest is adding on to it.
Okay. Does anybody from the audience want to ask any questions? We've got 2 roving mics here, so just stick your hands up and catch my eye if you've got a question for the panel generally or one particular member of the panel there. Okay, we'll carry on. Yeah, sure. Just say who you are and where you're from.
I'm Danny Bryars, PhD.
Okay.
What responsibilities do we think clients have got in this? Two questions, actually. God, I'm greedy. Sorry.
I know. It's question
What
inflation.
responsibility have clients got within this mix? And then what about the opportunity for driving revenue to clients' bottom line through print media? What opportunities have clients got there as well?
Who wants to take that one? You can take it in two parts, or you can divide it, if you like.
I'll take the first one. I don't think the clients see it as their responsibility at all. I think that's why they employ agencies. And I think kind of one of your points earlier about it being quite a dangerous time, I think for the industry that it's an opportunity. It's actually a time of opportunity. I think because of the answer to that question, agencies have become business partners and consultants, not media planners and buyers. So I think in most cases clients have devolved that responsibility to agencies.
Okay. Right. Peter, I'm volunteering you for the second part.
I'll take the second
Okay,
part, if
Sally,
you
you've
like.
got the microphone there.
Yes, so I think in terms of driving revenue to the bottom line, there's more and more pressure from clients to potentially offer to pay agencies purely on revenue gained as a result. And that's hugely dangerous because I know from those layer diagrams that advertising is like the icing on top of the cake. It's a small
Yeah.
level, and it is so dependent on the media buyers, one thing, but then it's also dependent on the content. And one of the things that's important with the globalization of media is actually that there are kind of strategic planning guidelines being given out at least a regional level. And then if your agency isn't developing copy that works in print, print isn't going to work. So I think the whole kind of revenue to the bottom line, absolutely have an approach for talking about how it can contribute, but don't put it all down to the media buy or the media mix.
No, I mean, you had a long list of other variables that are way out of control of any type of
and then
agency.
there's a whole base level, which is your long-term effect, which is more than the kind of long-term we're talking about. It's the whole brand building over decades that takes place. So marketing itself has a small role, and then within that, media has a small role within that.
Is there, Peter, is there a sort of incentivisation problem that nobody is incentivised on these longer-term measures? Because, you know...
Well, I just wanted to first build on what Sally said. I mean, I think the answer here is that more clients should be building more econometric models so they know exactly what value their agencies are bringing to them. And I think then they should be incentivised on the back of that, because then it can be done reliably. And Sally's very legitimate concern that advertising is merely one piece in a very complex cake of chains of cause and effect would be taken care of. So, and I do think that should be that is a true business partnership where you both share risk and reward, and I think that should be done. But it's got to be done on the right kind of metrics.
Yeah.
So I've been very encouraged by conversation already that more and more clients are looking at doing the important ground piece on how short-term, immediately accessible metrics might correlate with long-term success. That's great. I think it's got a million miles to go yet, but at least the journey has started.
Yeah.
That is fundamentally what needs to be. There needs to be far more modelling work done on the relationship between short-term metrics and long-term effects. And some of them will be found to be very relevant, and many of them will be found to be totally irrelevant. But until we know which is which, I don't see how we can square this particular.
I mean,
circle.
Alex, you talked about that right back in your first. I mean, what are the kinds of short-term metrics that you think could become longer leading indicators, if that's the right phrase?
I think if this is done well, and I think it's worth, to Peter's point, having a sensible conversation with clients about the value of modelling and the types of modelling you do, because the point of this isn't just to flog more clients, more models, much as I would love to do that. But
that's Sally's job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and mine actually, but probably all of ours now. But because it's about helping clients and businesses understand that the damaging cost of not doing that. Because if you're not modelling properly, it's not that people are going to put this conversation away and say, okay, it's fine, we're not going to do performance-related fees anymore. We're just going to do them on the things that are easy to measure. And you end up in a situation where you optimise towards the things that are easy to measure. More money goes into very kind of bottom of the funnel, very reactive stuff. You end up optimising your activity towards that, and you end up designing advertising that is shouty and intrusive, and that people become more and more
gradually
willing to block.
disengage
Yes.
from it. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I think once you start to do that, once you start to get into that model way of looking at things, you start to get a renaissance for certain stuff that people have kind of downplayed in importance in recent years. So brand tracking metrics, for instance, we're now typically at the point where lots of organisations will track 50, 60 metrics on a monthly basis and not really pay attention to any of them because they don't know which ones are meaningful. As soon as you start modelling that against business outcomes, working out which ones correspond to longer term growth, you can save a bit of money on research often because you can start to whittle down those metrics. But B, you get a really clear picture of which metrics matter. And it's not just research metrics either. So there's been some really interesting work done recently on the specific value of search volumes. So underlying kind of organic search volumes for a brand and the parts of brand equity that they correspond well to. So they correspond particularly well, as you'd expect, to salience, to top of mindness. And therefore they can be used as a kind of early proxy for growth in salience.
Yeah. Okay. So we are. I mean, are you seeing evidence of this, Rachel, at Carat, that you're moving in to a more nuanced, I suppose, rather than a sort of broadside way of metrics?
I think you find that every client has a different agenda, which makes it hard. I think I suppose we've got people right on some scales of it, of saying we're drowning in data, which obviously you talked about, and some people who've decided to opt out of that and just focus on some particular metrics. I mean, to be honest, the brief you get most often at the moment is I want short-term sales, but I want it to be really good for our business long term. So obviously, what they want,
don't
clients
discount them. Or whatever.
want
Right.
everything.
As always, yeah.
Yes. So
That's having Sally's cake and eating it, I think,
Yes.
isn't it? Yeah.
I think we probably look after our clients too well. They're used to us giving them everything, so they tend to ask for it. So I don't know. I think everyone's looking for a holy grail of being able to pull all their bits of data into one place and make sense of it. I suppose 5 years ago we'd always start a pitch or a new conversation with what does your information tell us? What does your data tell us? Let's get a story out of it. It is quite hard to do that now because there's so much data. And don't forget, as media planners, we're not just making decisions about whether to put it in print or into digital or into TV. It's should we be putting it into conversion metrics on a site or in investment levels. It's becoming more complex, and the role of a marketeer is becoming really difficult.
And media allocation is a less important, or takes up less of their time than
Absolutely.
it did. So but that's good for you because it puts more onus on you, doesn't it?
It puts more responsibility, which is good, and I think that seat at the top table we've been fighting for and done a really good job of getting is great, but it does have more responsibility with it.
Yeah. Okay. Paul, will you?
I mean, I don't know whether this is typical of the industry or not, but definitely what's actually long-term thinking has driven our growth in the last 3 years. So we've got a lot of web businesses, whether it be Late Rooms, We Buy Any Car, AO.com, Expedia, and kind of what you've seen in those web-based businesses over the last decade is they've grown up controlling the SERP pages and not needed that much brand awareness or kind of long-term brand awareness. Google has done everyone a favour because their nicely transparent algorithm, funnily enough, always goes up every year, regardless of ad depth or impression volumes.
Funny that. Yeah.
Funny that.
Yeah.
But actually, that's made a lot of those businesses stop and think, right, well, if our average CPCs are going up 15% year on year, in the next 2 years, we need to put 30% more into our budget to stay still. So the conversations we've had with those guys is essentially invest in building your base. Over time, you will need to invest in acquiring customers for new every time you sell something. And we've seen that be hugely successful for AO.com. So they came to us about 5 years ago with that very problem. Their initial test spend was $500,000. They'll spend 18 million this year. So I think, definitely that the web-based businesses are having to build brands.
Yeah.
I think it's different for the long-established brands.
Yeah, I mean, AO spends a lot of money on TV, doesn't it? Because of that
Yeah, and I think
bloody
that's because
slogan's going around my head now.
It's and we're talking to them about widening that media mix. It's the easiest way to build a brand quickly, but then you need to kind of broaden that out and talk to people in different states, in different circumstances. And we're starting to get there, and it's an evolution with clients like that, and it's a journey that you go on.
Yeah.
They don't just kind of come in and say, right, there's £10 million, build me a brand, I'm sick of paying all this money to Google. They come in with a problem and they say, right, I'll give you an amount of money that I can afford to lose this year and it not affect my bottom line. You need to prove to me that it'll work in the short to medium term. Then you go through that journey with them, and they eventually get more. They have more faith, and they become more faith in their own convictions and their own beliefs, and they'll let you look at it more longer term. To the point where, in their kind of PLC report this year, they actually put the success of the business in the last year down to their investment in brand.
More clients should do that, right? Can I ask what is?
So can I just applaud that? I think that's
Yeah.
brilliant.
I
I think
agree.
it is absolutely the way forward. I think more media agencies should be having those kind of conversations.
Real
terrific.
business conversations. Yeah. Can I ask? I mean, one of the things that news brands don't quite uniquely offer, but have a powerful attribute is context. A lot of the other money is spent when the buyer has absolutely no idea of the context of where this, pump and dump or pay and spray or whatever it is. How important should context be? I mean, is it downplayed too much at the moment? Alex, I mean,
I think it's massively important, and it probably is. It's downplayed, and I guess one of the things that news brands can do extremely well is very, very strongly associate a brand with a particular context. I mean, there's a phrase we often use that there's no such thing as a luxury search result, and there are there are premium news brands, there are and magazine brands, and it's very, very powerful. It's not the entire job that brand marketing needs to do, but it's very, very strong, and it shouldn't be underplayed. And I guess it's a kind of two-way conversation as well, and needs to be, between news brand editorial and news brand advertising, perhaps more so than it has been in the past, because
breaking down a church and state.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and demonstrating that editorial quality and advertising quality perceptions go so strongly together.
Okay, Sally, is that how important do you think that is when you look at it in the sort of meta way that you do? Can you put a value on context? If anybody can, you could.
Well, yeah, I wish I could, and I wish that we'd thought about that 10 years ago when we started our database. So we don't even separate in terms of our kind of media channel spends. We didn't set off saying, well, apart from TV, where we did direct response TV versus brand TV, we haven't separated out what sort of content is this. We've gone back for some of the exercises we've looked at to say, well, does this feature a call to action? Does it feature a phone number? Does it feature a website? There was an amazing result where we did lots of analysis and said, actually, I think it was working for the AA a while back. So actually, there is a much bigger effect on your online sales when you feature the website on your TV spend, but which sounds kind of really trite, but to be able to prove that it has an effect and actually featuring it all the way through, because it was a silly website name, the AA rather than AA.com, which is either an airline or Alcoholics Anonymous, and so people had to know that and such like. So the context and the content are hugely important, but they're not the sort of thing that can be easily turned into a number, and hence we struggle to analyse them sometimes. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't forget them. You layer that on top. You add some human judgment.
Could, in this idealised world that I may be painting here, could context play some kind of role in the way budgets are allocated? I mean, or is it just too complicated from a media agency point of view?
Nothing should be too complicated. It's not really simple. And
Right.
I don't think you can do it with a kind of automatic set of rules. You're going to have
Human.
a planner
A human.
who knows,
Human
I know,
being.
that's
knows
honest.
about the
That is a
channel
scary
and the
thought, I know.
titles and can come up with some recommendations.
I'm sure one of Alex's algorithms can do that actually, as long as it's not a malgorithm or whatever it is. But I mean, seriously, do you think is that feasible from a media agency point of view to
I think so. I think
allocate greater weight to context?
I think, ultimately context and content are the strengths. And I think sat here, it's obvious to me that that's something that news brands have got a real role in. The pendulum, if anything else, is definitely swinging back towards quality. I think clients get that it's not just about numbers. So I think there's a real role for news brands to play in that. And I think clients are getting smarter. I think we talk far more about the funnels and loyalty loops and where our role is in that. And I think people know they've got to understand content and have a really cohesive voice about their brands to move forward. So I think they get it.
Okay, all right. The pendulum might be swinging back towards quality, but the money isn't, though, is it? Yeah, I mean, that seems to be pretty unambiguous. The money's not coming in the direction of the pendulum at the moment.
Well, Paul talked about his spend being up into news
We
brands.
need more Pauls, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So he's giving all our money.
I mean, do you think that's happening, Peter? Do you think that...
Well, I was going to say. I mean, I think there's a slightly deeper battle to be fought here. In that, obviously, it's horses for courses. If you are using news brands as a medium, as an activation medium, so it's a retailer driving this weekend's sales, there's some kind of offer going on, then your context kinds of analysis is going to be very different from if you're using it as a brand building medium. A lot of work has been done by people like Robert Heath and others that demonstrates just that the kinds of messages that work most powerfully on a brand building level benefit hugely from an environment in which the consumer is relaxed and at ease. And so I would have thought...
And paying attention.
And paying attention.
Yeah.
But enjoying the read. So I think that's the real strength of the news brands as a medium. It is in the newspaper world, which for many people is a relaxing time. When they're used in some ways like TV. It's a turn-off time. And that is a godsend for a brand building environment. It's exactly what you want to get emotional messages over under the radar. But if you're obviously looking for getting an activation message over, you will approach it differently. You might want a different area of the paper, or you might want different kind of titles, and 1,000 other things. But your decisions will be different. So, and I think part of this is about refocusing. Part of the process we need to go through to reverse that decline is to get clients to realise that this is a brand building medium again. I think that's what they're forgetting, and to get them to realise the benefits of that, and the money will follow that, I'm sure. Paul's experiences are goldmine, and I think they should be shared more widely.
Yeah.
Can I come back on that again, Dominic? Just to say that whilst for us, we're in a zone where our 25/4 standard print is dropping slightly. Our biggest growth channel last year, or our biggest growth area, from a value terms, if not in percentage terms, in percentage terms, sorry, rather than value terms, is in sponsorship and in partnerships, and they're not exclusive to anything other than working with really, really strong brands, whether it's the Lads Bible or if it's the Daily Mail. It's about working with really strong brands, and that's our biggest and an area that we're really focusing in. So it might not be showing up in the bottom line, but it's definitely
And
there.
that's also where Alex's point about breakdown or more relaxed relationship between editorial and commercial needs to be evident. Yeah. So okay.
Good morning, Gary Freelick from the Telegraph. I think there's a very big elephant in this room, and we've not really covered it yet. And looking at the empty seats, we could actually get an elephant in here. Fantastically, we've got a very compelling argument regarding news brands, and I think we've had some great speakers here today. Yet, do you think there's an apathy within your businesses to our medium?
Okay. Well, you could have asked that one earlier. We could have gone all day with that one. So we'll have to deal with this one quickly. Are you apathetic? Is there an apathy? Not you personally, but is there an apathy within the agency business towards news brands?
Happily,
Yeah.
first on that
I know. You're all going to... I know.
We're all going to say no.
Yeah.
Genuinely, Gary, I don't think there is. I think there's great relationships. I think there's pockets where there's real innovation, and this is embracing what clients want now, which is deeper relationships. And I think there's lots of good stuff going on. But I think this thing you talked about this room being empty, is part of that. And do I think people like Google and Facebook are better at putting on industry events to invite, making a big hoo-ha and getting loads of clients? Yeah, I do. So I'm not sure if it's an agency apathy or potentially a client apathy. And I think clients do veer towards new and shiny and making sure that if they're asked by their chief exec about Facebook video views, they're ready to answer the question. I think that exists, but I don't think it's unsolvable, because I think there is good news stories out there, and I do think you've got a good story here with efficiency. I think clients are more and more likely to measure their activity, and if you can give them good evidence and talk to them about it in a compelling way, I think they'll listen.
Okay, I think we're coming towards the end of time, so I'm going to let Rachel answer for the panel here. But I just want to say what a wonderful panel. No, I'm going to ask one last question. I'm not going to ask one last question. Oh, okay, all right. I thought I could try and cheat the system, but I obviously can't. No, seriously, no. Okay. We had a wonderful panel. They've been wonderful speakers. They've been very frank and open with their answers. Can we give them a big hand?